for his part in a late-night back alley brawl over the weekend, and it ended with
NEWSNATION. So, the president said firings were coming. That hasn't happened. But tonight, on day 7 of the shutdown, perhaps a new warning from President Trump, floating the possibility that federal workers might not receive back pay.
But for the most part, we're going to take care of our people. There are some people that really don't deserve to be taken care of, and we'll take care of them in a different way.
Meantime, out west, flights grounded in one of America's largest cities. How an air traffic control tower is going unmanned for hours at a time as shutdown staffing shortages persist. Also tonight, they're leaving the Lone Star State. The Texas National Guard arriving in Chicago. How long will those guardsmen be allowed to stay? And the Attorney General Pam Bondi under oath, testifying on everything from crime to Comey to Epstein and allegations of spying on Republican senators. But first tonight, here from the Hill, the new threat and no votes to reopen the government, at least not today. A week into the shutdown, and tonight the White House isn't backing down from the idea of possibly not giving some federal workers back pay. Republican leaders, though, downplaying that idea, and the communication between both sides essentially is non-existent.
They're the ones that started it. They're the ones that have it, and it's almost like a kamikaze attack by them.
I do not know of any Democrats who have spoken to President Trump or members of his administration on this issue of reopening the government.
But is bipartisanship actually closer than you might think on one of the key issues? Tonight, why Chuck Schumer is praising Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. The Congresswoman joins us here on the Hill in a moment. But first, our Kelly Meyer live at the White House tonight. Kelly, you were inside the Oval Office with President Trump today. He made those comments about possibly, or at least there was the report of the White House possibly not paying some federal workers. You asked the president about it, and there was a little bit of a muted response.
Yeah, Blake, a lot of back and forth on this back pay question. President Trump saying, quote, we're going to take care of our people, and, quote, there are some people that really don't deserve to be taken care of. I asked him about that.
Why do you say some federal workers should not get their back pay?
Well, you're going to have to figure that out, okay? Ask the Democrats that question.
Now, President Trump says he will follow the law when asked about a 2019 law that says furloughed federal workers should or will receive back pay when the shutdown ends. But the White House is pushing ahead with this threat. Here's how Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries responded today.
The law is clear. Every single furloughed federal employee is entitled to back pay. Period. Full stop. The law is clear, and we will make sure that that law is followed.
And Blake, it seems both Republican leaders Thune and Johnson are against the idea of not giving furloughed federal workers back pay when this shutdown ends. Blake.
Our Kelly Meyer live tonight at 1600. Kelly, thank you. So one of the issues really at the center of the shutdown, there's lots of them, obviously, when you talk about anything this big, but one of them centers on health care subsidies as part of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare as it's known, which are set to expire at the end of this year. Now, Democrats are demanding an extension to those subsidies now. They're tying this with funding to the government. Republicans say, let's just fund the government, move forward, don't tie any policy issues to funding the government. And just the other day, the Georgia Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene posting this on social media. It was a lengthy post, but I'm going to pick out this part here. Here's what she said. She said, let's just say as nicely as possible, I'm not a fan of the Affordable Care Act, but I'm going to go against everyone on this issue because when the tax credits expire this year, my own adult children's insurance premiums for next year are going to double, along with all the wonderful families and hardworking people in my district. You haven't heard that really from Republicans. Now, here's some of the numbers, and this comes from a nonpartisan health estimate about insurance premiums for those using Obamacare. 2025 average, this is out-of-pocket costs, about $900 or so. But if those tax credits, those subsidies expire, it could jump all the way up, basically another $1,000 for those who use Obamacare. The Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer today highlighted those comments from the Congresswoman. Watch.
Hold on to your hats. I think this is the first time I said this, but on this issue, Representative Green said it perfectly. Representative Green is absolutely right.
How about that? Joining me now, with us once again here on the Hill, she is the Republican Congresswoman from the state of Georgia. Marjorie Taylor Greene sits on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. Nice to have you in.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. We normally do this remotely, so appreciate you coming in studio. That post, look, I could talk to probably 200 Democrats, 200 Republicans, and they'd give me the party line talking points, right, on either side. You came out and said no on these health insurance premiums. Your own kids, you said their premiums would double. When did you learn of that from your kids? And I guess when they told you that or you found out about it, sort of what went through your mind?
Well, if you follow my post, health insurance is something I've been talking about for quite a while. Insurance across the board, it's crushing people. The cost of living is gone so high in the past 4.5 years, and it hasn't come down. Rent is unaffordable. You can't buy a home. A lot of people don't even know if they'll ever be able to buy a home. But insurance premiums are unbelievably high.
Up and to the right.
Yep, and they're looking to go up. Not only people on the ACA, but people that have private plans as well. This is the #1 issue I hear about in my district. I work for Georgia's 14th district, and so I'm willing to take off team jerseys, so to speak, right now and call it literally like it is. This is a crisis in America, and I really want to work on it.
So privately, are you hearing Republicans tell you, yeah, you're right, or have you not heard that yet?
I've only talked to a few people today. They agree with me, but to be honest with you, since the government is shut down, we haven't had much conversation, much communication at all within our conference, which I also think is a major problem. The House is not in session. We should be. We should be working on appropriations. That's important to me. I really want to get appropriations, tax dollars back to my district, and I also think we have other important work to do. So I was largely against the CR. I want to do appropriations, and I don't think the government should be shut down right now.
So how do you are, Republicans don't want to tie this issue to funding. You obviously think this is an issue. It has to be taken up at the end of the year. Do you think this should be tied to the funding battle now, or get the government open and then deal with it later?
Right. Well, so I'm coming from a business background. I believe in walking and chewing gum at the same time. I think we should be able to work on all of this at the same time. What I am doing is sounding the alarm bells. This is a major crisis in America. When people are working paycheck to paycheck, they can't make ends meet, and we are looking at a massive spike in health insurance premiums. It's going to crush people. They're going to have to drop their health insurance, and that could put a lot of people in danger of being bankrupt with hospital bills or health care bills. And I don't think that's the right way to treat the American people. We're elected by them. Their taxpayer dollars fund our paychecks. They fund the entire government. And I believe the American people deserve better.
So I hear your point. The House Speaker Mike Johnson just spoke with our Leland Vittert. Full interview later tonight here on NewsNation. But I want to play a part of that for you and get your reaction on the other side.
There is no daylight between House Republicans, Senate Republicans, President Trump, and the White House. We're united, and that's why we're winning this fight, and it's an important one for the American people. With regard to the subsidies, remember, that is 100% a red herring. It's a distraction. This is what Chuck Schumer and the Democrats put together to try to make the issue of the day.
He said the issue of the subsidies, you couldn't hear it, so he said the issue of the subsidies is a red herring. And it's something essentially that Chuck Schumer and Democrats are talking about right now.
Well, no, the issues of the subsidies are real. It's not something that anybody can say is made up. Also, people with regular or private plans, their premiums are looking to go up a median of 18%. That's brutal. I know a lot of small business owners, like a family of 4, and they're paying $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month with deductibles of $7,000 to $10,000, and approximately 40% of these people don't even use their health insurance. So they're just burning money just in case they might have cancer, or just in case they have a terrible car accident. And then you've got single moms, many Americans that are really struggling that are on the ACA. If you double their health insurance or even triple it, these people are they're either gonna have to drop it, or they're gonna be choosing between rent and their health insurance.
So on the bigger question of health care in America, right? Obviously, the Affordable Care Act is the law of the land. 23 million Americans use it. Here's what President Trump said yesterday, and then I want to pick it up.
We are speaking with the Democrats, and some very good things could happen with respect to health care.
Would you make a deal with them on the ACA subsidies?
If we made the right deal, I'd make a deal, sure.
So he talks about speaking with the Democrats there. And the question is, look, I remember back in 2017, the first thing Republicans were going to do was repeal and replace Obamacare. Here we are 9 years later, and it's still the law of the land.
Right.
Do you want to see your party go down the path of repeal and replace Obamacare and put in Trump care or whatever the heck you want to call it?
Back in those years, I very much supported that. This was before I became a member of Congress. The ACA, Obamacare, hurt my family very much. Our health insurance went from $800 a month to over $2,400 after the ACA was passed. But here's the issue, though. We are years past this.
Yeah.
And the health insurance industry has dramatically changed. Many of these insurance companies went out of business or stopped offering health plans. So we're in a situation where the landscape has changed. Simply repealing that is not a easy solution that will solve the issue for Americans. I think it's much more complex. And that's why I'm talking about it. I'm not here as a politician saying, here's my 10-point plan. I think that's a bunch of BS. Okay. I'm literally here in Washington saying, we're in a crisis. We have to fix this, and I am fed up with watching American tax dollars go to everything from the Ukraine war to Israel to Egypt to Jordan, and on programs that are completely useless. I'm literally here in Washington saying, you guys, if we don't fix this right now, Americans are going to be hurting, and they really don't care about R&D. They're going to be talking about what's happening to their bank accounts, what's happening to their family, and that's how they're going to vote. And I think Republicans got to get real and actually come up with a solution.
Let me leave you with this, because you mentioned you are here in town. Thomas Massie, and I know this is an issue that you've been talking about. He's a Republican from Kentucky. The government is shut down, but the House refuses to go back in session. This is his post. Why are we in recess, he asks. He says, because the day we go back into session, I have 218 votes for the discharge petition to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files. Speaker Johnson doesn't want that to be the news. Do you think Massie is onto something there?
Possibly. You know, my signature is on that discharge petition. And there has not been another issue where I have ever received more pressure than that one. And I'm pretty much shocked by it. I can't imagine. I've never understood how this is an issue. I think when it comes to women being raped, especially when they were 14 years old, that's pretty black and white. Seems like everyone should agree that this is the information that should be released. Thomas Massie could be right about that. I'll add another issue that we have as Republicans. We have a one-seat majority right now until the Mark Green of Tennessee seat is filled, and that doesn't happen until December. So that could be another problem, especially if there's an attendance issue. I think it's multi-layered, but there seems to be a major effort to block that discharge petition.
Give me a date real quick. You think the shutdown ends when?
I have no idea, but it doesn't seem it's opening up soon. But I will say, when we're seeing airports having to shut down and we're seeing people truly suffer, there's a lot of pressure.
We're live in Burbank, California, later in the show. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, thanks for coming in tonight. Nice to do this in person.
Thanks for having me.
All right, still to come here on the Hill. Another impact, you just heard the Congresswoman reference it. Have you heard what's going on as that's a live look? Burbank, California. What if I were to tell you that the air traffic control center there was shut down for hours? How could that happen? We'll tell you. Plus, the Texas National Guard in Chicago, against the wishes, as you know, of the local and state officials. So what now? How long might those guardsmen stay? One of the congressmen who represents the area on the other side of the break, plus this.
I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump.
How about that? The Attorney General Pam Bondi. That was just the start of what she had to say up on the Hill today. A lot of news, even in the middle of a shutdown. I'm Blake Burman, back on the other side in 4 minutes. See you then.
And no flavor.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on News Nation tonight. From Chicago to Portland to Memphis to right back here in Washington, D.C., the deployment of the National Guard and troops there, causing controversy and protests. The latest, the Texas National Guard troops now on the ground in Chicago, Illinois. The governor, Greg Abbott, the Texas governor, posting on social media this today, saying the elite Texas National Guard, ever ready, deploying now. In Portland, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem visiting an ICE facility that has been the scene of ongoing protests. She also met with Oregon's governor, a Democrat. Just in Memphis, by the way, that city's police chief says he's expecting National Guard troops to deploy there at the end of the week on Friday. And right here in the nation's capital, a testy exchange between the Illinois Senator Dick Durbin and the Attorney General Pam Bondi as she testified up on the Hill today.
The word is, and I think it's been confirmed by the White House, they are going to transfer Texas National Guard units to the state of Illinois.
I wish you loved Chicago as much as you hate President Trump. And currently, the National Guard are on the way to Chicago. If you're not going to protect your citizens, President Trump will.
All right, with us now here on the Hill, he is the Democratic congressman from Illinois, the Chicago area. Back with us once again, Congressman Jonathan Jackson. Congressman, nice to see you again. It's been a little while, but we appreciate you being with us tonight. What would you say there to Pam Bondi?
Oh, I would tell her that she is out of order. She's weaponizing this militarization of Chicago. This is further echoing the message that the president gave to the nation's military leaders when he says our enemies are within. Those are chilling and haunting and frightening words. And the president further went on to say that we should possibly be used as a training ground. He's using Chicago as a metaphor. He's making Chicago into a political prop. We need help. Of course, all cities do. 40,000 violent deaths are happening across the United States of America. The president is the master of distraction. This is so unnecessary to bring the military. It's against the law.
So what kind of help would you take from the federal level? What kind of help do you think you need, and what would you welcome with open arms?
Well, first of all, there's not a gun shop in the city of Chicago. There's not a gun range in the city of Chicago. No African Americans make any ammunition anywhere in the world. We should first call the Center for Disease Control. Let's call violence a communicable disease, an infectious disease, where we can go and contact trace who's manufacturing, who's selling these guns, so we can get these guns off of the streets of America. How can we de-escalate? My youngest son is 24 years of age. Our nation's been at war every day of his life. We have turned into a very violent nation. This Homeland Security budget is now $150 billion. It's the 10th largest military force in the world. Our military is $1 trillion budget. Our Homeland Security is a $113 billion budget. With that kind of resources, clearly we can put some money into teachers. We can put some money into youth programs. We can put some money into development, and we can solve all of our housing issues. We can do reindustrialization and invest in America. Those are the things I think the president should do. And we can also talk about opening markets where our farmers can grow and sell their food and not make America an isolationist country.
You know, you talk about this in your words. You say we're a quote-unquote violent nation. Something, Congressman, happened today in Oregon, which I thought it'll grab a headline. You might view it as small. I'm not saying you personally, but just in general, which was the governor there, who's a Democrat of Oregon, met with the DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. They met, they talked. I'm sure they had a lot of differences. I don't see that with J.B. Pritzker, your governor. I don't see him talking to the DHS secretary. I don't see him talking to the White House. In fact, local law enforcement is being told not to help federal law enforcement there. So is it time, Congressman, for J.B. Pritzker to do what the governor of Oregon just did today?
Well, I think that the tone has been very different. If you look at what the president has done, when he was talking to all of the nation's generals and military leaders, he says we're entering into Chicago. First of all, he is violating the United States law, the Posse Comitatus Act. You're not supposed to put the U.S. military on domestic soil. This was settled in 1878. In the interest of saying that he's trying to make cities safe and bring about law and order, he's actually subverting law. So the governor of the state of Illinois is standing on the side of law and order.
You don't want him picking up the phone
and is breaking the law.
You don't want Governor Pritzker to pick up the phone and have a conversation with Kristi Noem. Forget the president at this point, Kristi Noem.
Well, the president has told the governor he wants him to release funds, that he should give him a call. The president also said if as soon as he started this great day of liberation on April 2nd, he said the world was going to come and kiss him all over. And what trade deals have you heard since then? I mean, it just doesn't happen. That these are just things. And now this is a mass distraction. Our cities have challenges all across the country. The rural America has a challenge across the country. Not that our country doesn't have violent people. I'm saying our policies have not been directed towards its citizens. And he's trying to turn citizens on one another. And his policies are simply failing.
Jonathan Jackson, Democrat from the Chicago area. Got to leave it there. We'll talk again soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Of course. All right. Still much more ahead tonight here on the Hill. We heard from a Republican in the first block, Democrat there in the second block. And now there's this. The U.S. Capitol to the control tower. The government shutdown now impacting air travel. How did the control tower at the Burbank Airport in Los Angeles go unmanned for 5 hours? On the other side.
To learn more.
Day 7 of the government shutdown with no end in sight, or at least probably for the next, I don't know, week or so maybe. And Americans are just beginning to feel some of the issues. Some federal employees, for example, could soon be missing vital paychecks. Air travel already starting to feel the pinch as well. Some air traffic controllers and TSA, they're considered essential workers. They have to show up to work and without pay. But some use up their sick days basically in protest, leading to delays, cancellations, travel frustrations, like what we saw the last time this happened in 2018, 2019. Now, over the past several days, U.S. flights have seen a surge in delays and cancellations. From Saturday to Monday, you can see here delays and cancellations, they spiked. Delays basically doubled from roughly 3,000 to 6,000, cancellations increasing from 32 to 84. Not substantial, but if it's yours, man, what a pain. Denver and Newark, some of the airports facing disruptions due to staffing issues yesterday, according to the FAA. And right now, ground delays are in effect at Nashville International Airport, Chicago, and Boston as well. Kimberly Chang from our affiliate station KTLA in Los Angeles is at the airport there in Burbank. Kimberly, I saw this story and I thought, how's this possible? The air traffic control tower had no one inside it for hours.
For hours, Blake. Frustrating to say the least for travelers. The good news today is that operations are back to normal here at Hollywood Burbank Airport. You could hear the plane passing by me just now. But as you can imagine, travelers remain wary and cautiously optimistic after what happened yesterday. Take a look at this video. A lot of red on the board here at Burbank Airport. A control tower staffing shortage contributed to cancellations and long delays for travelers. Many waited more than 2 hours, according to the Federal Aviation Administration. An airport spokesperson telling me that yesterday there were at least 56 delays and a dozen cancellations affecting Burbank Airport. Apparently, they had no air traffic controllers in the tower for several hours. Due to the ongoing federal government shutdown, air traffic controllers are expected to work without pay, leading to an uptick in employees calling out sick. And what we saw yesterday was a ripple effect.
I want the government to get going. I want it all going back on track.
We do not have time to waste on the unnecessary distractions created by this shutdown. So our message is clear. End the shutdown.
So, Blake, even though things are back to normal here at the airport, as you can imagine, many travelers not completely confident that delays won't happen again. As you mentioned, things in Nashville also affected right now. Reporting live in Burbank, Kimberly Chang, sending it back to you in the studio.
Kimberly Chang with the powerhouse KTLA out west. Kimberly, thank you. With us now here on the Hill, Republican Congressman from Oklahoma, Tom Cole, who, by the way, is the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight.
Hey, thanks for
having me. You're in
me.
Studio. I know Congress, the House is out, but you're here with us, so we appreciate it. When you watch that, right, like we talk about a lot inside the Beltway, but then you get out of it and you see real life. Does that move the needle as a member of Congress? Saying,
It should.
My gosh, we need to get this fixed and
It
done?
absolutely should. Look, there's no excuse for the government being shut down. The House passed a very simple what's called a clean continuing resolution to keep it funded for a certain period of time. We've got a majority, or a bipartisan majority, actually, in the United States Senate that favors that right now. But Senate rules require that you get to 60 votes. That's not in the Constitution. That's not a law, but it is Senate rules, so it's up to them. But again, we hope some of our Democratic colleagues will reopen the government, and then we'll sit down and negotiate these various issues out.
One of the issues here today was the White House basically suggesting that maybe furloughed workers wouldn't receive back pay. And our Kelly Meyer asked the president about this today. I want to play that for you and then get your reaction on the other side.
Mr. President, why do you say some federal workers should not get their back pay? Why do you say some?
Well, you're going to have to figure that out, okay? Ask the Democrats that question. Go ahead.
Mr. President, just to follow up there, I mean, the law says that when the government is reopened, that workers will receive their back pay. So are you going to define the law there, or what do you?
I follow the law, and what the law says is correct, and I follow the law.
30,000 federal workers in Oklahoma City.
Most of them in my district.
Do you believe that all of them should receive their back pay?
I absolutely do. Look, none of those people had anything to do with this shutdown. This is entirely manufactured honestly, by one party. The Democrats have done this. But the president's got to make a lot of tough decisions in the next few days, maybe few weeks, until we get this thing settled. So, he's got an enormous amount of power. The people that shut down the government actually gave him that power. But I think he'll use it appropriately.
He's been talking about mass layoffs, hasn't gone there. Then today he throws this out, right? And I guess it brings up the question, quite frankly, of if he hasn't gone to mass layoffs and now is throwing this out there, why should we take him at his word that he might go down these routes?
Well, I don't pretend to speak for the President of the United States.
No, I know. I'm just trying to gauge from your...
Well, look, I don't think he wants to lay off anybody. The President wasn't for this shutdown. Republicans in the House and the Senate weren't for this shutdown. Republicans in the House, with a little bit of Democratic help, passed a legislation, clean legislation, to keep the government open and functioning. So as soon as we reopen the government, these kinds of problems disappear.
I had Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, your side of the aisle, Georgia, on this show at the top of the show, talking about the health care subsidies, the Obamacare subsidies. And she's basically saying, look, for her own children, the prices are going to double. Democrats say, we got to do this right now, and let's talk about it while opening the government. Well, to hear someone on your side of the aisle say, look, their own kids are going to be impacted, I wonder what Republicans eventually do now or before the end of the year with these subsidies.
I don't know. I just know the beginning of the solution is reopening the government. And right now, the Democrats are asking for a guarantee of $1.5 trillion, to be fair, over 10 years, in exchange for a 4-week reopening of the government. That's just not likely to happen, and certainly not with exactly the same legislation. The president and the majority leader of the Senate, John Thune, the speaker, Mike Johnson, have both said, look, we're willing to talk about these issues, but not while you're shutting down the government, threatening the jobs of thousands of Americans, their paychecks, their security. Other people that do business with the government are being enormously inconvenienced and jeopardized. So, look, the responsible thing to do is what we're asking our Democratic colleagues to do, and frankly, we've already accomplished in the House, and that is just reopen the government. Then we'll talk about these other issues.
When that happens and they come to you, do you think Marjorie Taylor Greene gets support from your colleagues?
I think she'll certainly get some support. Look, she's a very persuasive communicator. She's a very valuable member of the House. I think there'll be a variety of opinions on this issue, but that's really not the issue. The issue is who shut down the government. It's the Democrats. Please reopen it so we don't put people out of work. Then we'll talk to you about these other issues. But also remember, you're asking for $1.5 trillion over 10 years to give us an additional 4 to 7 weeks of government spending. So let's get real and negotiate on real issues.
Tom Cole is the chairman of the House Appropriations Committee in town.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. Appreciate it.
You bet.
All right, still to come. Other side of the break. The government shut down, but did you see this earlier today?
Clearly, you're a failed lawyer because you don't understand when someone can and cannot answer a question.
Didn't stop the hearings. The Attorney General Pam Bondi calling the California Senator Adam Schiff a failed lawyer. That was just some of it. What she had to say when she appeared on the Hill. Other side.
Join us for a nationwide conversation. Chris Cuomo, Bill O'Reilly, Stephen A. Smith, and more. Cuomo, live from the Kennedy Center. The News Nation Town Hall, next Wednesday, October 15, 8/7 Central on News Nation.
You download Dave.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on News Nation. The Attorney General Pam Bondi earlier today in the hot seat up on the Hill, testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee in a highly anticipated oversight hearing, putting on full display the divide between Democrats and Republicans when it comes to how both parties believe justice should be carried out in the United States and what's happened in the past as well. Interruptions, contempt, repeated calls for order prevailed, along with a whole lot of finger pointing when it came to the idea of the weaponization of the Justice Department. Democrats suggesting that President Trump has had his hands in the DOJ's decisions to prosecute his enemies, including James Comey.
The American public is entitled to know, Madam Attorney General,
the entire cabinet was at that dinner.
Whether you took instructions from President Trump after he told you very directly to indict James Comey.
I cannot believe that you would accuse me of impropriety when you lied about your military service. How dare you? I'm a career prosecutor. Don't you ever challenge my integrity.
And it started from there and kept going. For their part, other side of the aisle, Republicans went back to the Biden Justice Department and Jack Smith's prosecution of Donald Trump, suggesting that over a half dozen Republicans were spied on by Smith. Here was Senator Lindsey Graham, one of them.
Can you tell me why my phone records, when I'm the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, were sought by the Jack Smith agents? Why did they ask to know who I called and what I was doing from January 4th to the 7th? Can you tell me that?
No, Senator, and there were 8 senators in total.
For every Democrat who questioned her, Bondi had responses ready, from everything from the Epstein files to National Guard troops in blue states. Full panel here with me now. Bill McGinley, former cabinet secretary in the first Trump administration. Lindsey Granger, doing double duty, co-host of Rising on the Hill, here with us tonight. Scott Bolden, News Nation political contributor, and Jessica Anderson, former budget official in the first Trump administration. Hello to y'all. Thanks for being in tonight. This one was fascinating, Lindsey, because it was kind of two different versions of what you believe, or your side of the aisle believes, is politicization of the Justice Department.
Yeah, and I think Pam Bondi had a good heads up from watching how RFK did in some of these similar hearings to Kash Patel. So she was ready with the one-liners, which is something at least I appreciate. You learn from the history. But I think when they were asking tough questions about, let's say, Epstein and Comey, and her answers were to deflect and to find another response.
Deflect, pivot, attack, essentially.
Exactly, and be prepared with those attacks. And so I think, you know, the Justice Department, in its best sense, in my perspective, is supposed to be apolitical and supposed to pursue things in an apolitical sense. And so she should move forward with that intention, understanding that President Trump is a very intentional person to go after people that are his political foes, and she shouldn't act like an arm of that mission for him.
Yeah, I didn't like this hearing from an oversight standpoint, including Bondi's presentation. I had to watch this hearing. There was the Democratic senators were not attacking her. They never attacked her personally. What they asked questions about from an oversight standpoint is what they were supposed to do. And she didn't respond to many of those questions and then fired personal attacks back on them. It's like she had a bag of zingers and she was just taking one out at a time, firing away. So she was prepared in that regard. But I think the American people lost because whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you ought to have this oversight hearing. And whether the Biden administration did bad things or otherwise, she's the Attorney General right now. And her answers, no investigation, no pending investigations or personnel, but they had a lot of good questions for her that she should have answered.
Look, I thought that Attorney General Bondi did a great job today. I know that a lot of people don't like the fact that she was handing it back to the Democratic senators, but from the Republican perspective, we've seen for over a decade Republican officials go before these Democrats and be attacked ruthlessly under the 5-minute rule that these committees operate under. They take 5 minutes, they make a speech, and attack either the president or they attack the official and never give him a chance to respond. She clearly was prepped for this meeting. She decided to go in and not allow them to get away with it. One of the questions from Senator Sheldon Whitehouse was outrageous. He used the speech and debate clause to slander the president, and she handed it right back to him. And this is what Republicans are looking for. They're looking for officials who are not going to take this anymore, are going to fight back on the facts after we had 4 years of the Biden administration persecuting Republicans, including spying on sitting Republican senators.
You teed me up there for Jessica because there were a lot of Republicans and a lot of the president's base who were none too pleased with her about, call it what, 4 to 6 weeks ago or something like that with the handling of the Epstein files. Does this change it?
No, I don't think this changed anything with the Epstein files today. But what I think you saw was Pam Bondi, as Attorney General, representing the American people. We have been on our heels with a over-politicized and weaponized DOJ that first went after parents. Remember when this whole thing started? They went after parents. They went after pro-life clinics that were offering women's health care, free women's health care. Then they went after Supreme Court justices that weren't being protected. And then now all of a sudden we see that they were spying on U.S. senators. And so there's a lot here that has been politicized.
Is that setting up to potentially try to bring charges? So there's the Republicans over the last, call it 24 hours, have taken issue with the information that's come out that Jack Smith might have been looking at their phone records, right, as it relates to January 6th. And I wonder if that's setting up going down the line of trying to prosecute Jack Smith.
Could be, and there's enough evidence there to do so. I mean, this is a DOJ that was listening in on United States senators. Any side of the aisle should be opposed to that.
Hey, well, wait a minute now. There are no limitations to what DOJ can investigate and not investigate. And what was Jack Smith investigating? Hold on, no, very few. If he has a factual basis to believe, and he was investigating the conspiracy between January 4th and January 7th, he was investigating January 6th, and whether there were Republican elected officials who had participated either knowingly or not knowingly, that he certainly can investigate.
But if the DOJ has been weaponized...
Hold on, let me just real quick, if they got a federal judge to sign that wiretap subpoena, then they're good to go. Blame the judge, don't blame the Dems.
But we saw what the Biden DOJ did with the FISA court, where they lied to the FISA court, withheld information to go ahead and get the wiretap on Carter
Biden's not
Page.
president
But
anymore.
hold on a second. When you're talking about sitting United States senators, you're talking about speech and debate clause protection.
That's right.
Yeah.
Just like the executive branch has protections and the judicial branch. That is a significant violation of that if they don't have sufficient. Hold on. If they don't have a sufficient predicate. We haven't seen what they submitted to try and get the predicate on that, and we'll see what it is and whether it's factual or not.
You think I'm onto something here with
Yeah,
the Jack Smith question?
Yeah, I think that's where it's going, and I think that we know that that's the end game of all this. But like you're saying, like in order to get to the point that they got, there was supposed to be an apolitical judge that signed off on this, and so to get to the point where we're looking into records, you have to remember it's not a conspiracy theory that January 6th happened. It actually happened.
It happened.
And there were conversations around what was going on, when it was going to happen, what part of the election was real and not accepted, and so to go into that and to research that is part of the process of figuring out who was wrong and who knew.
And you did have
if they were
Republicans
doing this on
who
the
were
up
in
and
the
up,
White House.
they could have submitted all of that and actually had transparency and said, these are what our concerns are. This is what's going before the judge. You've seen none of that with the Democratic response since this indictment has come out. You've seen none of it.
Well, none of that would come out,
But there's no way they could have pursued that without the FBI director and the Attorney General signing off.
And a federal judge signing off on it.
Some of the issues that'll play out, Republicans bringing this up in the last 24 hours or so. We saw the Attorney General up on the Hill. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Still to come tonight, other side of the break. Is it smart or is it socialism? Did you see the stock that popped today? Not 100%, not 200%, and how the White House was in the middle of it all. Other side of the break.
Realbots.com today.
All right, if you're just getting home, trying to catch up on today's top stories, here is some of what's trending right now on thehill.com. How about this? The president returning to TikTok. He says, young people owe me big. The president posting his first video on TikTok since the 2024 election. Then there's this. The Supreme Court voices free speech concerns over conversion therapy bans. The Supreme Court back in session, first week of their session this year. This is one of the first cases they took up. And then you knew this was coming. You had to know this was coming, right? The president knocks ridiculous, as he puts it, NFL over Bad Bunny Super Bowl show and the kickoff rule. Again, you knew the president was commenting on it, and it was as expected. To find those stories and more, all you have to do is head on over to thehill.com. By the way, you can scan the QR code on your screen. Do we have it at some point? I don't know. to get our newsletters. There it is, that show up in your inbox every morning. You'll find my take there. How about this, speaking of a take, for tonight here on the show? A company I bet you probably never heard of until now was the star on Wall Street today. Trilogy Metals jumping about 210%, now a billion-dollar company, after President Trump announced in the Oval Office late yesterday afternoon that the U.S. was taking a 10% equity stake. Now, it's actually a Canadian company, but will help unearth copper and critical minerals in Alaska. There's now a very clear trend here. The U.S. has now taken anywhere from a 5 to 15% equity stake in these companies, large and small, all publicly traded. Intel, MP Materials, Lithium Americas, and now Trilogy, right? Now, the goal here is to tap into critical and rare earth minerals that power our technology, vital for AI, and are currently dominated by China. That's the reason why the government's doing it. But here's the thing. A government owning companies is also a distinct characteristic of socialism. We've talked about it here on the show before. Do you dabble in socialist traits to take on China, or are there better ways to go about it? Or how about it framed this way? What's the difference between a government investment in a company or government-run grocery stores, which the New York City mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani is proposing? We'll stay on top of it, as it is very clear that the Trump administration, whether you agree with it or not, is digging in to this new strategy. Elizabeth Vargas reports coming up here just moments away. She'll be talking to the prosecuting attorney who filed criminal charges against Mark Sanchez. That's coming up here in moments. I thank you for being with us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Burman. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Over now to Elizabeth.
The National Guard